I'm a thief and a shit kicker, and I'd like to be thanked.
Thought it was a turkey, I swear to God.
Fuck your ass. Fuck it.
Get that ass from here.
My parents would be real sorry if I don't get them the cha-cha heel.
Guys, girls don't wear cha-cha heels. Carry those types down. You don't wear those ugly shoes.
I'm happy for you all. I only wish that my day was as happy as yours.
Yeah, well, that's your problem. Fuck you.
They want us to put it in their blood.
I just threw your dog out the window, and I thought it would help, but I was wrong. I was dead wrong. I'll be the first person to admit it.
Never have I encountered such a morally bankrupt group of people. Can't hide 'em, can't hide 'em.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. At the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Do it! Do it. Do it.
We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for over a year. So if you haven't made the jump yet, we have lots of bonus episodes.
So many.
Backlogged, waiting for you. Speaking of which, we do have 2 new patrons this week, and they are...
God bless you.
Cody Bender, thanks for joining us, as well as Max Welch. Hope you guys are enjoying all those bonus episodes. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Also, we are on every podcast listener of choice, as far as I'm aware. No one has yelled at me still yet for not being on one. So if we're on there, we should be there. Go find us.
We absolutely should be.
But if you've been listening to the show, you've been liking the show, and you're listening on iTunes, go give us a good old rating and review over on iTunes. Helps us find new listeners, and we appreciate that as well.
Very much.
Those are your plugs for the week. I am your host, as always, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always,
Jamie. How you doing?
Jamie. Just Jamie.
Just Jamie. Jamie Miller.
We got it.
I keep it secret around here.
Welcome back to another episode. We are back talking sleazy movies once again. 2 weeks ago, I think, would have been the last time you guys would have heard from us, and we would have had my good friend Mitch Vischer on to talk for the first time, I guess, intentional comedy films.
Yeah.
Because we've talked movies that are funny, but I think this was the first time we straight up took on comedy exploitation films, and we took a look at Trauma Entertainment. We did the Toxic Avenger 1984, a sort of like pulp superhero parody.
Very aggressive parody.
Like full-blown grindhouse movie. 12-year-olds getting their skulls crushed in by teenagers, because that's what they do on the weekends.
Absolute insanity.
And we also did Trey Parker's Cannibal, the musical from 1993, the
which was
Colorado
cool.
legend Alfred Packer cannibal musical story, which was shot on video, which was a lot of fun.
Very
also,
cool
the
to
second
see
time,
Trey Parker's kind of origin too, where he was kind of starting.
Well, and right after we also did a shot on video horror, we did a second show. It's been interesting. We've been doing a lot of shot on video lately, and spoiler alert, we're about to hit a little bit more again today. But last week, patrons, you guys would have had your bonus episode, and that would have seen Jamie and I talking about The Matrix, 1999, and The Matrix Reloaded, 2003, Lily and Lana Wachowski. Jamie and I had the chance to see both of those films on 35mm film, so we couldn't pass up
just an amazing
talking
experience.
about that. Yeah, we saw it with a big crowd, over 150 people, and everyone was going nuts as if we were all watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear that episode again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. That was last week's episode. But this week, as always, we have brought with us a special guest, a film critic, film programmer, film festival goer, and a colleague of mine, someone I've been wanting to have on the show for a while. We have CJ Prince.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you doing, CJ?
I'm doing okay. How are you two?
Pretty good.
Yeah, we're doing all right. We're back
ready to
at
talk
it.
some crazy films here.
Yeah. Now, CJ, as this show goes, we ask the guests to bring 2 films with them. So what 2 films have you brought with you, and why do they pair together?
Well, all right. So you came to me a while ago and brought up the idea of having me on, and I was really trying to think of 2 films that would go together, and I decided to go with kind of examples of very transgressive comedies, one of which is really formative to me. The other one is more of a recent discovery, but is extremely in my wheelhouse, extremely my shit, as one would say. But it's more so like I was really into the idea of like pairing these two films together because seeing, well, I should say the films. The first one, going chronologically, although this is the one I saw later, was John Waters' Female Trouble from 1974. And the second one is the Stella Shorts 1998 to 2002 compilation by David Way, Michael Showalter, and Michael Ian Black. So I wanted to go with the Stella Shorts I saw back when I was in high school, and it was really formative for me. And basically, these two films have a spirit with comedy that's very lackadaisical, very ramshackle. Like, who cares? It's very roughshod, and yet they both work extremely well. So I felt like this would have been a good pairing for comedies that are both very absurdist, very transgressive, very offensive, but also extremely funny.
No, absolutely. I think that's as good as any introduction as we can ask for. So I think we're just going to jump right into it. Today we are going to start with Female Trouble.
Let's do it. Let's dive into some John Waters.
You'll follow Divine's life of sex and crime from its tawdry beginning to its very end. Share the tears and laughter with Divine, Edith Massey as Aunt Ida, and the Pink Flamingos Gang. A new high in low taste. John Waters' Female Trouble. She had a lot of problems. Coming soon from Saliva Films.
All right, we are talking Female Trouble, the 1974 extremely dark comedy film, co-composed, filmed, co-edited, written, produced, and directed all entirely by John Waters, and also starring, I guess his muse, but also one of his co-collaborators, drag queen Divine, also David Lockery, I believe, is his name, who actually passed away just shortly after the making of this film and wasn't able to do any more. But also Edith Massey, Mink Stoll, the single and only credit for one, Michael Potter, who I wish he did more stuff because he's so funny in this.
Which one was Michael Potter?
Gator.
Oh, yeah.
But largely, it follows the life and times of one young rebellious woman named Dawn Davenport, showing her progression from early 1960s student as a sort of like bratty schoolgirl to eventually in the mid to late 70s a crazed serial killer.
Yep.
All of which, according to this this summary, stems from her parents' refusal to buy her cha-cha-cha heels for Christmas, or cha-cha heels.
Yep, and that's exactly how the scene goes.
That's exactly how the scene goes. So, yes,
not happy
this
with
movie
those
is
slippers.
exactly as absurd as that sounds for anyone who hasn't seen it. But that summary really doesn't get also into how absurd this also is in the details. I think that for me, I absolutely gotta say I loved this film. I haven't seen a whole lot of John Waters. I'd only seen Hairspray previously to this, and I thought Hairspray was actually had some bleak comedy in the peripheries of it that kind of shocked me a little bit, including a character that John Waters actually plays in that film. It didn't actually prepare me for John Waters' sensibilities himself.
Yeah, I was not prepared at all. I gotta say,
which I gotta say is some sort of like CJ's already mentioned transgressive, but it's a sense of shock humor that's also mining like kind of, you know, like almost like a 50s culture and style, but incorporating like a broad range of people, styles, designs, and everything to try and almost mock normalcy and melodrama and art. And it is a full like shocking exploitation film through and through, which I was not expecting when I turned it on, despite the fact that I was aware of Pink Flamingos and Divine and some of the history of John Waters.
This movie honestly shocked me more than the hardcore porn that we watched. I know that
Widow
sound
Blue.
crazy,
Yeah.
but I was, the whole time I was watching this movie, I mean, I got to be honest, I wasn't laughing a lot throughout most of it. I I was just kind of shocked
you were
at the whole
shocked?
thing, and at times kind of disturbed by it. And in that regard, I do respect the hell out of it for that. But if I do stay a little quieter than normal, it's just because I'm trying to get on your guys' wavelength here, and it's just
Because you didn't have quite that same reaction.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm just not getting it as much, or if it's just like, is that the shock is kind of the joke in which you're so uncomfortable that you have to laugh, that kind of thing.
I think we'll get into largely some of the more stylish choices that he makes here, which definitely shock and disruption is a huge part of what he's going for.
Absolutely.
But also, I gotta confess, I laughed a lot during this movie.
Okay.
So, like, my reaction, half of my notes here are just like single line deliveries from this film and moments that are just so absurd and that John Waters takes so seriously that he ends up crafting almost an entire universe around them in ways that I really didn't expect. Even just simple lines where the girl stands up and early in the scene in the schoolhouse when he's trying to gauge this idea of kind of like a bit of like a school status quo kind of deal, and the girl rats on her is like, Don Davenport's eating a meatball sandwich.
Yeah.
Again, but she swears she wasn't eating it. That was the thing. She's like, I'm not eating it.
Yeah, so like really early on, I could just kind of see that he was clearly trying to move from what feels kind of like a sentimental kind of like old Hollywood kind of politeness, and he was trying to create something that seemed sort of like shocking and new and challenging both in content and in style. You know, eventually we get into ideas of depictions of beauty. At one point we get into the media a little bit. I was actually quite shocked by the time we get to the end.
For this,
yeah, and we end up talking about celebrity. We end up talking about all kinds of things. But for the most part, this just felt to me like a symbol of kind of like defiant outsider art.
It's like a giant middle finger, you think? Kind of.
Sort of, but also it's funny. CJ actually set we didn't mean to, but somehow we teed this episode up perfectly, because when we had Steve Carlson on, we talked specifically about the cinema of the transgression.
Okay, yeah,
which was that movement where we talked about Red Spirit Lake, where all of these guys, they wanted to reject kind of what they felt was kind of like the snobbery of film school and that kind of style and these kinds of things. They didn't feel that those styles had much of a vision for, these people who felt like they were outsiders. They didn't belong in that system. So and part of that movement was Richard Kern, who was literally in Red Spirit Lake.
Yeah.
And John Waters is also here a little bit part of that movement, where he's kind of like taking almost like 50s iconography and style, and instead he's challenging it stylistically in a way. And for me, it kind of felt like he was showing you like real deal outsiders and characters who would have no place in like the movies that he was studying and the movies that he liked. So he made a movie for them where they and after a while, what it felt like to me is that they just kind of took over the movie.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that their performances, their sensibilities, their cinematic craziness just eventually like hijacked the picture from him. So that's kind of what it felt like to me.
I would say, I mean, to kind of, I guess, explain at least my feelings towards it, because I first saw this maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. For full disclosure, I was literally on a first date with someone, and we didn't know what to do. And he was like, "Come back to my place, and we'll watch movies," because we had no idea what to do. And he put on Female Trouble and Showgirls.
Oh my God.
That's a hell of a first date. Holy shit.
So we're actually really good friends now, but it didn't work out date wise, but we're good friends. So, but no, so I was watching it, and I remember, the two things I remember was like, I laughed like hysterically at the movie, and a lot of it I just watched in amazement of like, I know I'm watching a great comedy, but I'm not necessarily laughing. I'm just kind of like in awe of how well done or well pulled off it is. And in this one, I think it's I guess ties into something I've thought about recently, because I've since watching this, I watched Pink Flamingos, and I just recently watched Multiple Maniacs, his two films before this, and I was thinking, well, what is it about John Waters that, like John Waters is extremely politically incorrect, extremely, problematic as one to say. And I know people who, they would, trash anything like that, yet they love his works. And I think it's because, and the appeal of it for me is he is really just targeting, like the societal norms and just standards of decency and standards of good taste. That's really his target. So everything that he's doing, which is obviously like upsetting and so politically incorrect, and just, he's throwing around so many terms and just images that are extremely offensive.
Yeah.
It's all in service of targeting really the majority, like the perceived norm, and going, it's like you said, it's outsider art. So for me, it's extremely funny in how, blatant it is, and it's just straight up, like, there's stuff that obviously we can't say or quote or anything now. I mean, but like it just works in that sense. So it's just like hilarious in that regard, and also because he builds this world where everyone feels so lived in, and they're just so wallowed in their own filth and squalor, let's say, and they're reveling in it, and they love it, and they celebrate it, and that's who they are. That you kind of, it just really works for me in that sense, like, so if it has this kind of, it's grounded in its own very weird way, which kind of makes it all the more funny, because because obviously it's just this, I guess, inherent contradiction to almost everything we all hold to be proper or decent or good, or the things that hold us off from being like crazed maniacs in society. So, I mean, for me, that was why I found this thing so funny. I mean, that, and then also I think, I also just want to throw out there that I think Mink Stole is just like incredible in this movie. That was my main thing watching this. I was like, Mink Stole, who plays Taffy, Don's daughter, is like mind-blowingly good, and I did not expect to see a performance that great out of a film like this, which is just so, like, trashy and just kind of poorly made. Like, Waters is just like shooting scenes in these long takes, and the camera's kind of plunked down, because it really feels like it would just take too much time or cost too much to try and do like a standard shot reverse shot setup. So he's just kind of like putting the camera down. Everyone just says your lines and let's get it over with.
Yeah, well, and he tries to make up for that a little bit with kind of like the actual sets themselves, which quite a few of them are his own apartment. This is one of the most colorful
films that we've really watched. There's so many like reds and pinks and yellows and all that.
Well, yeah, it's got that kind of like that pastel shading to it. Yeah, but also
then with all of this like disgusting shit happening around
work,
it,
and then also the way that he like crudely kind of like uses Baltimore also locations at the same time, which from what I understand, he had to make this in Baltimore because he was kicked out of New York University for smoking weed.
Oh, really?
That's true.
John Waters.
Yeah. So he went back to Baltimore, and he was like, I guess I'm going to make movies here. But it ended up working really, really well, because he gets a lot of these great locations that just make everything feel a little, just as kind of like dilapidated and disheveled as some of his characters end up being.
Yeah.
And also, to combine that with just like these like really garish kind of sometimes couches and sets and I love the hairstylist place.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Very, very old school looking and tons of colors, and then again to have a performance at the center of it as animated as Divine does a lot for it as well. I mean, I couldn't take my eyes off Divine when she was like just going crazy. And I'm talking before she even like literally goes crazy. Yeah. Yeah. When she injects eyeliner, oh my God. Like again, half of this could just be us talking about individual jokes in this. I love the one where she just gives birth to her child and bites the umbilical cord off herself.
Yeah.
We just talked about like It's Alive, where they talked about how the baby chewed through the umbilical cord, and John Waters doesn't even have the taste to not show it. They came out in the same year, I think, 1974.
Yeah, they did.
And not even Larry Cohen would show it. And here's John Waters just being like, "What if?"
We know how out there Cohen.
What if Divine just bit her own umbilical cord off?
Yeah, and we've seen Cohen do some extremely weird and crazy things, and John Waters is like, I'll take it a step further.
Yeah, not to mention she has forest sex on a greasy mattress with herself, playing Earl the steelworker, who's having sex with like giant skid marks that you can see on his underwear.
Yeah, it's
so disgusting.
They have to add the smallest little details to just
make it that
keep
much
making it that much worse.
Just so much worse.
Yeah, they're like, are you already uncomfortable? Well, here's a little sprinkle of more disgust.
Yeah, you're already upset by the fact of this like incest rape scene that's about to happen. Yeah. Well, what if one of them just vomited everywhere?
Yeah, you know?
I think I read somewhere that apparently John Waters actually waited to finish the film until someone he knew gave birth to a baby, so he could film that birth scene and have Divine shoot like they could have like a birth scene and use an actual baby. So he just waited. There was someone he knew who was pregnant, so he just waited for them to give birth and was like, "I want to use your baby in this scene."
That poor baby. Well, I also really like the structure of this, how he breaks it down into like these two different all these different phases of Divine.
Like the just chronicling her life.
Yeah, going from like rebellious schoolgirl who's like, I just want to burn the school down, and then she goes, actually, I should be the teacher because I would teach all these people better, and things like this. And then obviously she doesn't get her cha-cha heels for Christmas, which was just I was like cackling. I was cackling when the mom is crushed by the Christmas tree, being like, not on Christmas, just because she didn't get cha-cha heels. So she goes hitchhiking, she gets pregnant, she ends up having a kid, and some of the best scenes are between her and her daughter, who she names Taffy. And she's like, Taffy, never jump rope within 10 feet of me.
She's out of control.
Yeah, she's not sending her daughter to school because there's no reason to know about presidents, wars, numbers, or science, she says. She starts being a criminal with some of her friends. I can't remember her friends' names, but they basically just go around robbing people's homes, stealing TVs, and selling them for $10 because they just need $10 to get through the next day, kind of deal. And one great scene is when Taffy starts like acting up in front of them. And they're just like, come on over to your aunt. And Taffy just starts like biting them. And she's like, she's biting me, this goddamn little shit. And they like take the daughter upstairs. They lock her in the attic, handcuff her to her tiny little bed. And Divine is just so exasperated words. And she gives a genuinely like good performance, being like, being a mother is so hard. She's like, I've done everything a mother can do. I've locked her in her room. I've beat her with a car aerial.
Yeah. What else is there to do?
Specifically with a car aerial, though, which was a detail I noticed. And then she actually references it because when she beats the little child with just like the little ripped off car aerial, I was like, she doesn't have a car. She must have just stolen that to beat her daughter
just add another layer of how shitty it all is. Oh my God.
And there's all these strange characters on the periphery in the neighborhood, like Gator, the hairstylist, of course, and his Aunt Ida, who is introduced as a very large woman in a tight leather S&M outfit, which apparently needed 3 crew members to actually like get her in.
Really?
According to John Waters.
That's amazing.
But I lost it. I don't know what it was about. I think it was the fact that Michael Potter couldn't act. So every single time his line delivery was just complete deadpan. Yeah. And John Waters must have like noticed this while he was filming it, because like he had no other way of saying
it's literally
his lines.
That tone when you're looking at a bad actor, like just in, the odd student film that we've seen here and there. You're like, oh, that guy.
He's getting these lines that should be animated, like Aunt Ida in the S&M outfit, like dancing around, and he's like, yeah, woo. You go, Aunt Ida. Yeah. All right. Go, Aunt Ida.
It's like he knows kind of the emotion he's going to go for, but he just can't quite sell it. He doesn't really believe it at all.
Well, there's the other one where he's like, I'm going to Detroit to go work in the auto industry.
I have to put it also, like, he has the most Baltimore accent imaginable, which I love. Yeah. Like, it's so thick. I was remember watching, I was just like, I haven't heard a Baltimore accent. Like, I've heard Baltimore accents. I remember Kathy Bates did some role where she was doing a Baltimore accent, and everyone was like, what the hell is this? They just thought she was making up a weird voice. And it's like, no, it's a real accent. Like, watch this movie and hear people from Baltimore speaking. I've never heard one that thick. But I mean, I have to say also, like, Edith Massey, who plays Aunt Ida, and she's like such a terrible actor, yet such like an immensely compelling presence. Yeah. I don't want to sound insulting when I say kind of in like a train wreck way, because I don't mean to be like rude or negative, but it is kind of in that way. Like, she's just so bad at delivering lines and stuff, but yet you just can't, I literally can't look away from her. It's somewhere in Pink Flamingos, but yeah.
And I think the difference between her and the guy that's playing Gator is, like, she, even though, you know, she's not the best actress, she's still like going for it, you know, like she at least believes in what she's saying, whereas Gator kind of seems to be questioning himself his entire performance, whereas she's just going. She's like, I'm in this leather suit and I'm giving it. You know what I mean?
And it seems like John Waters kind of surrounds himself just with personalities. Yeah. That's kind of his thing. Yeah. And it kind of seems like he chose a lot of his actors just based on the fact that they have unique looks. They have unique, you know, again, I felt that these were people who would not star in movies ever. And John Waters felt like his project was to make a movie that people like that could be in. Yeah. And I actually found that strangely compelling. I was like, I'm watching something that would never have gotten made.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, but that does make me like it a little more, to be honest, too, just in that regard, because that adds to the element of him making. I think he's just
shining light on people that he feels like movies would never look at. That no camera, that none of these people are traditionally good looking in any sense, right? And goes to
make a movie that no one would probably want to look at.
No, exactly.
You know, outside these circles.
Exactly. I kind of find that contradiction fascinating, especially as we develop later into this story, because the actual story itself, once it makes itself clear, it takes about half the movie to get there. Yeah. But it's Divine who sort of falls in love and marries Gator. And they have such a strange marriage life. Yeah,
it's pretty much
Gator is a hairstylist at the I think it's called Lipstick Hairdressers or Lipstick Beauty Salon, I think is what it's called, and it's owned by I'm going to call them the Dons. It's Donald and Donna Dasher.
The Dashers.
The most like eccentric couple I've
John
ever seen.
John Waters always has alliteration with his name. So it's Don Davenport, Donna Dasher, Dave Dasher. So it's always...
And Donald Dasher. I just love that they were both like both the short forms for their first names were Don. So it's Don and Don.
Yeah.
And they kind of find out that they themselves, similarly to John Waters, have a proclivity for kind of strange characters and strange people. And I love that bit where they're doing an interview for people to work at the hairstylish. Crap, what are all the hairstylish people's names? They're really funny. It's Dribbles, Wink, Gator, and Butterfly. Those are the four hairdressers who work at the salon. And they have a brief scene where they're interviewing new employees, and they're looking at, Don Davenport there, Divine is there, obviously, and then there's two other people who are there. And one's like, I'm a stripper. And they were like, okay, cool. We'll come back to you. The other one's like, I work for the telephone company. And they were like, get out of here. Yeah. They were like, what's wrong with the telephone company? They're like, get out of here. You're disqualified.
That's too normal for us.
Yeah, so they want strippers. They want criminals. And Divine catches their attention immediately because Divine, playing Don Davenport, she goes up and goes, I'm a thief and a shit kicker, and I'd like to be famous. And they were like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. And I don't even think they're interviewing for the job. This is just interviewing the customers, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Because they want to apply. They don't want to be doing the hairs of people who aren't living a sort of grotesquely fashionable, fabulous life. Yeah. Which ends up coming into the story as they end up sort of like hiring Don Davenport to be their muse, in a series of art photographs they want to do of women committing crimes, because we
all know she's great at that. So
yeah,
perfect candidate.
I forget what their thesis on that project is, but it has something to do with trash and beauty or something like that.
Crime is beauty. That's basically like the. Right. I don't know if that's what they thought, but I don't know if I forget if it's what they said or if it's what Dawn kind of adopts. But that's basically the whole idea, which came from one of the members of Charles Manson's gang, because John Waters was in communication with them while they were in prison, and that's where he got the idea of crime is beauty from.
Right. Yeah, beauty and crime, we feel them to be one. And the worse the crime gets, the more ravishing you become. So that's what they want to capture, and they sort of like play to Dawn Davenport's vanity. They kind of like stoke her a little bit in her fame seeking, and they push her and push her and push her into further crimes, basically, including beating her own daughter, being abusive. I love the bit where she picks up the chair like a pro wrestler to beat her daughter
smashes
with
it over.
Well, and right before she smashes her daughter with the chair, they're like, pause, look at the camera. And then she finishes the blow.
Yeah. I gotta say that out of all the moments, like I was saying, I was as I was watching this, I was very kind of just shocked and trying to take in what I was watching. But the moments with once they added kind of this this longing for fame, and how eventually it gets to the point where she's gonna go to prison. We'll get there and everything.
It warps her reality and how she sees the world.
But she thinks that life in prison is the ultimate award, because that's
she was just told crime is beauty. Yeah.
You're the best criminal you could be if you get that. So it's like, it's adding to that.
I think I'm trying to think back, like earlier on the film, I'm trying to think of like the best encapsulation of the kind of feelings I have towards it, which I think is when after Dawn and Gator have sex and Taffy walks in on them. And Gator, it's my favorite. I shouldn't spoil because it's my favorite line in the whole movie, and I laughed so hard. But it was when like Gator just says to Taffy, he's like, "Come suck Daddy's dick," and they just have like a hard close up of his flaccid penis, and it's like, and I remember I was just so taken, like it's just that line combined with the fact that Taffy's supposed to be 14 years old in the film, and like that shot is just so, I was just like, oh my god, that's so just like, that's just appalling. And then I think she says she's like, I wouldn't suck your dick if I couldn't breathe and there was oxygen in your balls or something, and like that line is so funny. And it's just this weird thing of like how he can go from just being so like offensive and then just within like a second can make it just extremely hilarious.
I also liked that Gator and Dawn's sex life was completely strange as well, because she was like, "Can't we just do it normal?" And he's just like, "No, I'm getting the toolbox out." He starts putting a hammer on her genitals, and then she's like, "No, not the hammer. Use the needle nose pliers."
Yeah. I'm feeling that right now.
Yeah. You look like you were ready to say something.
There was something it was the sucking dick thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's something, I think this is where I get confused with the film, is because we've had other movies where there's been offensive things, and in certain regards we say, like, that's probably not the best to have in your film or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm getting confused by is what the difference is between us being offended by something else, say, like in Death Wish, than this. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Because we were like, we got a 3 Death Wish because we don't agree with some of the politics that they're doing. But with this, we obviously don't agree with what they're saying here.
Well, because I think...
So I'm getting a little confused.
I think the difference is that John Waters is self-conscious.
Okay.
I think
he knows he's making something gross, and
he's intentionally shocking sensibility. Like, he knows that he's pushing boundaries when he's doing it.
You know me. I mean, usually that gets to me.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand that and I see that. But with this one, I was just kind of like, I felt like a lot of it was just me watching really, really shitty people do really, really terrible things. And there was some humor in that, but at a certain point, I got like overwhelmed by it, I think.
Yeah, see, the difference is that I would think that a movie like some of the exploitation ones that we've talked about wouldn't necessarily agree all the time that they are handling shitty people. I do think John Waters would agree, and I think that John Waters would call himself shitty.
Okay.
So what?
Okay.
John Waters says, I mean, he like one of the famous like quotes of John Waters I know is like when he says, you have to have really, really good taste in order to know what bad taste is, because you have to kind of be aware of what the boundaries are in order to get past them. Yeah. So it is like I said earlier, it's really him. I think the difference is if you look at something like Death Wish, in which you can't really get a sense of it could be one's personal politics, or is at least left to kind of an ambiguity in which it can appeal to certain people's more like toxic viewpoints or ideologies or whatever. But John Waters is, I mean, the one thing that elevated him from a lot of other people in exploitation or at least with, films in bad taste, was that he was extremely, like Josh said, like extremely self-conscious, extremely aware, extremely intelligent about what he was doing. And he was able to kind of, I guess it boils down to like his target here is he is just skewering like societal norms and skewering and just attacking what people find people's sense of decency. So because of that, these things are offensive, but I mean, he is just being confrontational to kind of get a rise out of people, not necessarily even trolling, because I think there's still a sincerity to it. But I mean, I think he's just a very smart filmmaker who just gets it in terms of how to kind of approach offensive subject matter and all this stuff, but do it in a way that's not necessarily endorsing things, to have it kind of removed from it, to kind of see the paradox. And I think in a way, just he knows who to target and how to target.
I was going to say, I guess the difference would be sort of like when we were talking about when we did Toxic Avenger and Cannibal the Musical. It would be a case of there's a difference when some, like, I think that John Waters would agree with you that the stuff you found gross was gross. Yeah, whereas a lot of the other films we've talked about, I don't necessarily know that that they intended it to be that way, or if they thought that way, or it's left ambiguous. I think that this is so far removed from ambiguity that this is intentionally like attacking the nerves in your brain to be like, this is disgusting.
Is it ever?
And reprehensible in all kinds of different ways.
Do you think that that's
But I think John Waters also is like, I'm disgusting. My friends are disgusting. He still has an affinity for. Yeah, I think he has a complicated relationship with it, where he's just like, a lot of the people that I like and a lot of the people that I hang out with aren't beautiful in the way that culture and magazines and fashion and movies have told us that things are beautiful.
But he sees the beauty, and even if it's surrounded by a little bit of,
Yeah, so I think he's kind of like just, he minds the contradiction of that people are complicated and gross and disgusting, but also that we should not avert our eyes from that we should look at that we should be interested in that.
Yeah. Now I also know that he had he had his interest in the Charles Manson murders and all that. Do you think him dedicating the film to one of the murderers was just part of him kind of going like another, like, just to add a little bit to that disgust factor?
That I can't speak to, because actually until you brought that up, I actually didn't notice that part.
When I was watching it, because I was like, okay, I think I'm getting it in a way. It was still very overwhelming, and then I looked it up, and then I saw that it was dedicated to a Charles Manson murderer, and I was kind of like, is that to add on to like the kind of gross, like, whatever, or is that I was just wondering. I don't know.
He saw them, I guess, as sort of like outsiders and
freaks
in their own way. And I don't know. What do you think? What did you make of all that stuff, CJ?
I haven't looked too much into it. I've heard that he's kind of expressed some regret over doing that. Given but I mean, like, I'm not 100% sure on that. But I mean, no, I mean that, like I said, even in Multiple Maniacs, which is in 1970, he was making jokes about Sharon Tate's murder and that. So it was always kind of a topic of that I think fascinated him. And I know that he was actually having correspondences with Tex Watson, who the film's dedicated to. Yeah. So I don't know if they actually met or if he was just doing like a pen pal thing. But I think part of the dedication was that, like, the idea for Crime is Beauty and all that came through his correspondences with him. I think probably, John Waters just probably had a fascination with it, just because, it was a really shocking event at the time. And John Waters was clearly someone who was just contrarian and just wanting to kind of go against, everything. So, it's part of the film. It kind of is with it. It's a film that by design is meant to be as offensive as possible. So to me, it's just kind of like something else thrown in the mix. You're kind of like, oh, okay.
Well, what I found interesting about it was that, like, he doesn't say it in the movie, I don't think, or anything. I had to wiki it to find out, but it was a fun little add-on to the kind of like doing an offensive thing again, because I saw the movie, I watched it, and I'm like, that was something. And then I go on Wikipedia, and it's like, by the way, it's also dedicated to a murderer. So I was like, damn, John, you're really going for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could talk about its transition eventually from all these different kind of like crime sprees. That
speaking of murders,
that they go on to the point where Dawn Davenport ends up murdering her own daughter. She herself gets disfigured by Aunt Ida because she breaks up with Gator, which really pisses off Aunt Ida, and she gets acid thrown in her face.
Yeah.
And there's this like prosthetic makeup that they put on her to show it all. And I gotta say, I absolutely loved the scene where they're unwrapping her face. Because they're like, don't even do anything to it. Like, it's just going to be great. Like, it's another form of like this sort of destructive disfiguration is just even more beauty.
Yeah.
And they're opening it up, and the one guy is just like, I can smell flesh, and then the other one's like, it's just like an art opening. As they're slowly like unrolling the bandages off her face. And I mean, I think it's right after that they start injecting the liquid eyeliner into her veins.
I really enjoyed that detail. That was a very cool thing.
Which apparently they actually did, or they really used a needle on her and stuff, which apparently they had to have a nurse present.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Probably.
Yeah, well, and then they also had a nurse present for something else.
What did they put?
That Divine was doing, because it was it might have been the trampolining thing. Because they actually had to get like trampoline lessons on how to do all of that stuff.
That performance had training. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Did she really rip the phone book in half? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the most impressive part of the performance.
But it all kind of comes to a fold in the big finale where Dawn Davenport is jumping on the trampoline, putting on this big performance on a stage show where she's dancing around. At one point, she starts giving a gun a blowjob, which is funny. It also happens in the Stella shorts.
Yeah, in like the first scene.
The audience just randomly starts all painting using lipstick and painting on their faces. And she starts, Dawn Davenport just starts yelling all these crimes that she's done, which apparently is taken straight from Divine's actual stand-up routine, apparently, that he had for a while. And it kind of caps off with, who wants to be famous? Who wants to die for art? And the one guy's like, I do. Boom!
Yeah. He's like, I want to be part of the show?
Yeah.
That was a great moment.
And then she just starts gunning down the entire audience. The cops barge in and also just start shotgunning everyone in the audience as well. And then I was completely flabbergasted that this turned into like briefly a courtroom drama. And Aunt Ida's taken the stand, and at this point Dawn has taken an axe to Aunt Ida's hand, and she now has like a claw hand. Like she has a claw hand, and she was trapped inside of like a bird cage on a stool for like months or something. All while going on this crime spree for beauty. And everyone's saying all this stuff, and it's it's vaguely true, except for the fact that the Dons or the Dashers don't take any responsibility for any of it, basically. But all of the stuff that they say that she did, she absolutely did. She murdered so many people and did so and was so violent. And she was like, "That's not how any of that went." And it's just like we watched it go down that way. Like that's just it. Is John Waters doesn't at all shy away from the fact that she transitions into like a full blown like psycho murderer,
mass murderer.
Yeah, exactly. And even when we see her being like, this is all like taken out of context or whatever, like it's just like
she's clearly nuts. Like just
it just shows that I think he kind of took us on the journey with her, where honestly the transition didn't seem like that stark. Like for me personally, it didn't seem like she changed a lot from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie.
No,
just the actions and surroundings kind of did a little bit. which I found really, really fascinating. And then obviously it all again ties into the public's reaction to her, and that everybody is fascinated. And I think this is what it got a little bit interesting, bringing up the Manson thing, is just because John Waters also kind of indicts people who give these people fame and are interested in them.
That's true, yeah.
And how,
because that kind of comes with like Divine's character moment where she's like, I'm going to be infamous. I have the highest award that a criminal could possibly achieve.
Yeah, like this is amazing.
Comes from the media giving her that exposure.
Yeah, she's literally being executed in the electric chair, and she's ecstatic. She's like, "This is amazing. This is so great."
I fucking love
and I
you
don't
all.
think John Waters shies away from being like, part of that is the fact that media really finds these characters interesting, and fascinating, and that there is sort of an impetus there to do it in some capacity. So again, I feel like this is such a self-reflexive movie that John Waters is at once reveling and critiquing himself, his friends, and doing it in a way that is very, very stylish and shocking. So I gotta say, maybe as we angle towards the reductive rating round and final statements on this one, I gotta say, like I really like this one. I'm like, maybe let CJ get his final word in here first, though.
I would say, I'm agree. It is a self-reflexive film, but I think it's the Dashers are really, to me, like a critique of the kind of people who have a fascination, a kind of a voyeuristic, perverse, interest in people like Dawn and people who are on the fringe. Right, because they're people who, they're part of it, and they're part of it. At the end of the day, they're really, they can't handle the extent of someone like Dawn, someone who's more purely just vile. And I think, and yet, like John Waters, I think, does that in a way in which you can see a film that's about like, really people who are just on the fringes and all this stuff. And John Waters, his films kind of like live and breathe. It, like you can tell, like it doesn't feel observational anyway. It just feels like he's as deranged as everyone is, and he has like sincere like care and empathy for it. I don't necessarily go too deep into his films are obviously like inherently political and stuff. I don't go too deep into much of it because I really think at the end of the day he's just trying to kind of like just do bad taste and shock and offend and make people laugh and gross them out, which is fine. Like it works brilliantly in this. But I think I would say like it is interesting as kind of a him laying down the line of people who kind of are exploiting this versus the people who are very genuine, and he somehow is able to.
Who they are. Yeah,
he's somehow able to fall on the other side of it. Most people fall on the exploitative side of it, and yet he somehow, he makes his film so Looney Tunes that he can, be on the crazy side, the one who lives and breathes it. But I think it's interesting in that sense. There's definitely more to it than just like the shock and gross factor. But it works on both levels easily. You can find a lot beyond just kind of the gross out factor and the shock factor. But I just remember seeing this and it completely blew me away because it was, it's hard to think like, maybe because I'm just so like hardened, or I think I'm so hardened that, a movie from like 74 would actually be this, downright shocking. Like even Pink Flamingos is like, I saw that not too long ago and I was like, holy shit, like this is really goddamn like crazy. And I would think, after hearing so much about it over the years, that it wouldn't live up to its reputation, but it does. This one is lesser known, so it's not as popular because this came out right after Pink Flamingos, and it didn't get as much of a popular reception. But it's still really shocking, but also just really, really goddamn funny.
I did find it fascinating that John Waters premiered this in a prison.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. In Maryland, where the death penalty had actually been banned until the day before he premiered the film.
Oh, wow.
So the day he premiered the film the day before they had brought the death penalty back, so then everybody watched a criminal get executed just in time for the death penalty to be
That's
brought
crazy. Not to mention the criminal going out saying, "I fucking love you all."
I love you all, yeah, which is so great. And I love some of those jail scenes too, just how like it's the first time
the prisoners like absolutely adore her.
and the prisons are so unfashionable and mundane, and you know it's so not what Don Davenport has been kind of like building towards. And Don is so just like out of it, and like this is all just one giant show, and now I'm the star of it. Yep. There's one great line that one of the guards gets coming in where they're hooking up, and she's like in a really thick Baltimore accent, like, "No popping pussies is a violation of jail rules."
Yeah.
But yeah, I gotta say, I really like this, and this was honestly pretty close to the 5 for me. It's gonna get the 4, but I think just as a piece of shock cinema and comedy, that's just but you know it's again it's self-conscious in a way that I weirdly didn't find obnoxious. A lot of the time I do find that kind of obnoxious when someone is just being like, isn't this so shocking? Isn't this so wild? But I don't know. I found something unique in the style that he's going for here, where he is kind of challenging not just norms of society, but like of style.
Like just filmmaking itself.
Yeah, of like, you know, he's looking at kind of like, you know, Hollywood filmmaking style, and he's being like, this is polite, this is sentimental, this is what a lot of people consider sort of like normal and beautiful, and he's directly challenging that with his own, you know, scuzzy 16 millimeter style that he's kind of picked up on here. And to also, as I said before, what I really felt ultimately about this film was to take these people on the fridges, real deal outsiders, and make a movie that they could actually star in. You know, people who would otherwise never have cameras pointed towards them ever, and, you know, make a movie that is just absolutely them through and through, because it was made by someone who feels like one of them, someone who is part of that community. So in that sense, there was just no way I could look at this almost as like a moral character study, even though John Waters is pushing buttons on that level sometimes. Yeah. I just felt that he had more interest in sort of just upsetting a status quo in interesting ways, both stylishly and through characterization, and the fact that, I mean, this is just for me, this was just like an absolute riot. Every time people were like delivering lines, every time there was like a really shady detail on the fringes of the frame that, like, again, God, is when I couldn't believe like the skid marks thing, because like why would you even put that in there?
Yeah,
it's just why would you do
that? Just to have
and I didn't realize until after I looked it up that Divine also played Earl. Yeah. So I was just like completely flabbergasted.
And we didn't even talk about the scene where the daughter goes to the real father and kills him.
Yeah, like he tries to rape her. He ends up just vomiting everywhere
because he's so drunk.
And she stabs him to death with a mayonnaise knife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Just a wholesome family.
It's just great stuff. Yeah. So yeah, this one's gonna get a 4 from me. Nice. And for you, Jamie, I'm gonna look up a couple more lines I want to get in before we wrap up.
Nice.
So I got so many notes.
I'm gonna give it the 3 for now.
Oh damn.
I'm just It really just threw me for a loop. It was one of those movies where I was watching it. Yeah, it kind of was. I was watching it, and I can honestly say I wasn't laughing a lot. I was shocked the majority of the time and was trying to figure out what the joke was. I will say that the conversation has helped me here.
You're right.
I really enjoyed your take here when you were saying that he was kind of making a film for people that wouldn't necessarily be able to be in a film or your traditional film. Mm-hmm. And that kind of do-it-yourself punk rock attitude I always love. You know, I respect that. This is also my first John Waters movie, and I maybe I'm wrong here, but would me watching, because this is a later one of his, right, or like the third or fourth, would me watching like Pink Flamingo, the Maniacs one, would that be maybe like something
CJ,
to lay the seed, you know, to lay the groundwork there, so I'm not like just what the fuck
does watching Pink Flamingo and Multiple Maniacs give you a little bit more context for what he's doing here?
Yeah, in a way, yes, because I mean, like it's. I would honestly say that Female Trouble is the least offensive of those three films. You have to like Pink Flamingos. Pink Flamingos is like, you know, like the one that made him a sensation.
Yeah.
Like you have to buckle up for that movie. Like you even know, like everyone knows, you know, the infamous ending scene of that film with Divine, and I mean, Multiple Maniacs is even more amateurish, even more like roughshod than Female Trouble. But I mean, it has. I mean, there's a sequence in a church that's just kind of like, it's just mind-blowingly like offensive and excellent. And I mean, like, so yeah, you just have to prepare yourself. Like, I would say that honestly, if you go back to, I would recommend Pink Flamingos next, but you gotta like if this threw you for a loop, like buckle up. Pink Flamingos.
Well, and the thing is, I think what does it for me, because I mean, we watched plenty of crazy shit on the show. I like crazy shit. I'm not the guy that gets offended by everything by any means. Am I that dude? But for me, I guess it was the fact that it was kind of like we've explained. It's just kind of doing it to kind of
get a reaction.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff always makes me kind of just like, okay, like I get it, but.
See, that's just so interesting, because that was how I felt about Toxic Avenger,
right,
but you didn't feel that at all.
No, yeah,
I
felt like I got what it was doing. It's just
funny. We had this exact conversation like last week.
We're on the opposite ends now. We're having a moment, but yeah, I think it just shocked me, and because of that, I wasn't quite getting like the humor out of it. But having this conversation, I do want to rewatch it.
Try it again and be more prepared for it.
Once I'm prepared, I've seen what it's doing.
Let Divine show you consciousness by knocking you unconscious. I think that's a great line.
I can dive into the humor a little bit more. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3 for now, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
All right, what's this other line I wanted to get in? Oh, I'm your attorney, Don, not your press agent. In the courtroom.
Yeah.
Good shit. Sorry, CJ. Before we head out, though, what was your rating on the film?
I would be with you, Josh. I would give it a 4. When I saw it years ago, I think I gave it a 4.5. But watching it again, I saw it a few months ago again because I was introducing someone to it. Because there's more fun introducing. Clearly, there's a lot of fun to introducing people to this. You know, letting people kind of experience it for themselves.
See, that I would enjoy doing.
Yes, I think. But this one, I mean, what I would say anything is just like, it's slightly, because I just think once Dawn is arrested, it just, John Waters' earlier stuff, his pacing was off to say the least. But because some of it just drags. But like I think that first hour or so is just like absolutely fantastic. Like almost just pretty much near or masterpiece of comedy. And then so I would say a 4.
Sweet. All right. Well, that will wrap it up, I think, for Female Trouble. We are going to be right back, and we are going to be talking the Stella shorts.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in the mood for some pizza, you guys. I'm in the mood for some real Brooklyn pizza. Hey, the Brooklyn pizza. Hey, you wanted a pizza. About some real fucking Brooklyn pizza. Papa's a coming. I've got nipples, fuck. How can you milk me? I want to see the monkeys do it. I want a pizza. I want to see the monkeys do it. Give me some pizza. I want to dip my balls in it. Hey, the Brooklyn pizza. Hey, give me some of that pizza. Live from New York. It's Saturday night.
All right, we are back, and we are talking the Stella shorts, a collection of short shot-on-video homemade films from 1998 to 2002 by the comedy group Stella. And I think we're going to let CJ introduce this one because I actually didn't even know that they work. I'm familiar with almost every single one of these comedians and work and movies that they've done. I was not familiar with the fact that they were a comedy group previously. So, but CJ, you said this was a really formative comedy group for you.
Yeah, I mean,
and your sense of humor. Do you know what? It was funny. I felt like I learned something about communicating with you watching these. Because I have met you multiple times at the Toronto Film Fest, and I've talked to you, and I was like, wow, this is exactly CJ's sense of humor.
It's I mean,
CJ's tweeting style, everything. I was like, it's right here.
I started watching these sometime in high school. So basically, I mean, to give the background, I guess, behind the shorts in general is that, the Stella is made up of David Wayne, Michael Showalter, and Michael Ian Black. They are a part of the comedy group called The State, which had like a 1 or 2 season show on MTV in the early 90s. And I was never a big fan of The State, but after the show, it was a cult classic with a lot of people. It got canceled. And so they all kind of broke off into doing their own thing. So you had people like Tom Lennon and Robert Ben Garant, who have become, very successful screenwriters and actors and stuff. They went off and did shows like Reno 911 with Kerry Kenny and other members. And then, but even before Reno 911 in the 90s, I know like they created a show called Viva Variety that Mike Lee and Black also co-created with them. And then what you had was with Showalter, Wayne, and Black, was they just kind of were like, let's make our own comedy group. And they had this thing called Stella, when the whole kind of gimmick was they would always wear suits. And they would just they did a show, they would do a regular show in Brooklyn as a routine. And they eventually, toured it around. And part of the show in Brooklyn was that they would kind of be like, hey, this happened while we were on our way to do the show tonight. And they would play a short that they made. And then, and then what they did was, after touring and they kind of built a little, following and success, they compiled, 4 years worth of these shorts and put them on DVD and sold them at live shows. The one thing, I felt bad picking this because it is so difficult. Pretty much the only way you can see this now is if you illegally download movies, or you have a time machine and can go back in time to when they did the live shows and sold these things. They can't sell them now because this thing just, copyright would have killed them. They were just kind of doing this before they even got popular. This is even, even during and after Wet Hot American Summer, because they were just doing this. Because I think Wet Hot American Summer was 2001, 2002. Yeah. So, for me, I got introduced. Well, years ago, I watched Wet Hot American Summer on TV randomly one night. It was on the Movie Network, as Canadians will know, the Movie Network. Yes. And then, I randomly turned that on one night, and I was watching this movie, and I was like crying from laughter. It was so funny, and I kind of fell in love with it. And then years later, I learned about Stella, the TV show that was on Comedy Central, which was basically like, their live show, and these shorts and all that kind of were the pitch for a regular series. And the series Stella is quite different from what these shorts are. So I started watching the show, and then I discovered the shorts online when I was just looking things up. I think it was used to be hosted on like College Humor. And then I saw these shorts, and I was like, oh my God, like this is... I was just like heaving from laughter at almost every single one.
Their show Stella on Comedy Central, they actually had problems with, because Comedy Central actually, like, they were even a little too transgressive for Comedy Central. Like they were like, can you put like less dildos in it? And they were like, no, that's the thing.
Well, actually, I was like, the thing with Stella, the TV shows on Comedy Central, was that they actually made a very concerted effort to not do anything raunchy and offensive that they did with the shorts, because as we'll talk about, the shorts are extremely raunchy and extremely offensive. And so for the show, they decided like, we're going to avoid doing all that because we've already done it, and we're going to try it. So it was more just straight absurdism, straight surrealism. People compared it to, Marx Brothers and a lot of like older slapstick and stuff. So, but what happened was, as that show went on, because it lasted one season and got canceled, about halfway through the season, you kind of see them realize that they're not going to last beyond a season, and they kind of just stop giving a shit and do whatever they want. So the show itself is great. It's really funny, and they even lift some jokes and sequences pretty much directly from the shorts, but they kind of filter it to make it more network friendly, let's say. So basically that's kind of the whole like background for me. Discovering this in high school, it really connected with me. I mean, a lot of stuff that was really formative for me in high school. Like a lot of it was like Late Night with Conan O'Brien on NBC, and that's because there was this, like, who cares? This like total just like middle finger to logic and like, I was so used to like narrative constraints and cliches and stuff, and Conan's show was just pure silliness for the sake of it. And this is one, and David Wayne, I think, I consider David Wayne to kind of be the main guy because he's the one with the most directorial experience. His main thing, and what I think is his greatest strength, is he has such like a deep down awareness of cliches and conventions and narrative, and he knows exactly how so much of it can be made irrelevant because we're so used to seeing these things, and he kind of takes advantage of that, so it becomes really disarming and funny. And that's kind of like all throughout this, because it's so just sloppily put together, and they don't give a shit about anything, and it's really just kind of going for a laugh. Even if they're going for the cheapest laugh, they're going for the laugh.
Yeah,
so
this has such an absurd, like all of these shorts have such like an absurd rhythm to them, and they're always like frequently running over each other with like ideas and arguments and literal abuse sometimes.
Like half of them end up just like everybody fucks, and
then, or everybody fights and kills each other.
Again. Yeah, it's like you gotta fuck or fight, and then you'll be happy again. Because it always gets resolved. That's the best part. Because they'll have the worst, most violent skit ever.
Well, because they
like
got to the comedy show at some point.
Right. Like the Carol, the
caroling one.
Yeah, the caroling one.
They literally like
they literally
cannibalize
just
each
fight
other
to the point where they're like bleeding everywhere, and then they just cut back to the living room. Everyone's shaking hands, all happy, and they just go on with their day. And it's, I don't know, it's almost like they're constantly doing the worst possible things, but at the end of the day, it's like their characters don't give a shit enough at all that they feel it's been resolved. It's almost like we're watching their own minds instead of like an actual reality. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, the thing that I find really interesting is that you're right that happens, but for me it felt more like they wrapped it up because that's like
what you have to do.
That would be a storytelling cliche. Like we have to reach the conclusion.
Yeah.
But what for me, one of the absolute funniest parts for me was when they started developing like a strange comic universe out of it, where like every once in a while they would all just sit around and get sad, and they would have flashbacks of previous shorts where things just went terribly.
Yeah.
And like it was watching these shorts like
the
in
Paul
succession
Rudd one in the forest.
Yeah, but there's even other times where like they have flashbacks too, or like they have recurring moments of violence and just previous pain that they felt, where like a sexual interaction or a violent interaction or a violently sexual interaction sort of like kind of like stays with the character in some capacity, because all three of them are obviously playing themselves in all of these shorts.
Like psychopathic versions of themselves.
And they're, I mean, we'll be upfront with it. Like most of them are completely nonsensical in terms of
like the plotting,
the
realism of the story.
I mean, even like individual dialogue, the way sometimes they just this is definitely improv comedy, and it has that kind of like, you know, sporadic spontaneity to it, I guess.
Absolutely.
Which did remind me a lot of obviously Wet Hot American Summer, but also like Wet Hot American Summer. The thing that I have always really loved about that film is that they do, you know, absurd things that people would call, that you could say, you know, I have seen people say that this is like random humor. They're just doing something absurd, and it's like, wow, why did that happen? But the thing is that they always, sort of like how I was saying with Trey Parker and Cannibal the Musical, it feels like they still commit to that absurdity, and it becomes a lot of the time a fundamental part of a character or a location, or you know.
Well, that's a good point. It almost
and they actually investigate it.
Yeah, like it almost starts with complete absurdity, and then as you dive into the actual character,
it almost makes some weird sort of comic sense.
Some weird sense just within these guys, because they're such psychos. But
yeah, because obviously I'm thinking something like that, the iconic Christopher Maloney and H. John Benjamin pairing in Wet Hot American Summer, where he's like he plays the talking can of vegetables that likes to perform autofellatio or whatever, and like I feel like people always call that like a point of like just random humor, but like how much that ends up coming back and expanding like the peripheries of the universe.
People forget is like, because it does start off very absurd, like it's gonna kind of throw you for a loop a bit, but then as it goes, especially like being introduced to these Stella shorts for the first time. At first, I was like, "Oh, damn! Like this is pretty out there, pretty crazy." And then, as it gets deeper and deeper, I just started enjoying the absurdity more and more, and kind of becoming one with it and these characters, even though they're complete insane people.
Yeah, but eventually, like I started out with these first two shorts here. Maybe we'll start getting into some of the shorts here. The first two shorts here, I was like completely like, "What?"
Yeah,
and then.
And I even got a bit of that random vibe, at first, but then once again, as it dives in, I'm like, oh, they're doing this, like they want to do this, they're doing it on purpose. There's a reason for it in some regard, as loose as it might be sometimes.
Yeah, well, because I mean, and sometimes it is improv comedy, so a lot of times someone will explore like just like a joke. They'll just point out a joke, and then they will. But again, the way that they will commit to that joke and and actually run with it frequently. Yeah. There's one in the turkey hunt one, which is a great one to start off with actually, where I also like that they always try to harmonize and sing songs.
Yeah, I love that. It's great.
But there's one really awesome one in the turkey hunt one where they are being instructed on how to obviously go turkey hunting and use guns to kill turkeys. And Michael Ian Black says that he's a staunch gun control advocate, is can I like strangle the turkey? And he's like, no, like how the Pilgrims did it. He's like the Pilgrims use muskets. Yeah. Like that's how they did it too. But there's one bit where I think it's one of the Michaels shoots the turkey instructor, shot Dan, and he's just like, I swear to God, I thought it was a turkey. And one of them just goes, okay, this is serious, like we need to call Marcus. And the one's just like, who the fuck is Marcus? And then they just run with that. Yeah, who the fuck is Marcus? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And again, the way that they'll just run with something like that, and then they'll end up I think that short just ends with necrophilia and masturbation.
It does. They just jerk off and then they run away to pop music. Like it's like the happiest thing in the world. Which once again, that's kind of like what they go with a lot of the time in these skits, is either there's like a cut to resolution, which you don't really get to see why it's gotten to that point, or it's something where they just accept the horrible thing that they've done and just move on with their day.
Well, not only that, a lot of time they'll just double down on it. Like they shot the turkey instructor, and then they're like, oh wait, he's still alive, and then another one just shoots him in the head. They were like, nobody call the cops. They're like, yay, no cops.
Yeah.
Woo.
I think it's this thing where, like, I mean, with David Wade, I mean, I think he just know, like, they know, like, okay, we have a start point and we have an end point, and as long as things come full circle, it really doesn't matter what the hell happens in between. You can literally do whatever you want in between. And there's another thing where, like, years ago, I remember the DVD came with like a commentary track for all the shorts that they did. And I remember they straight up admit, like, one that they would run out of ideas making shorts. They really just kind of like winged a lot of these shorts. So if they ran out of ideas, they were like, okay, everybody have sex, or we're gonna throw a dildo in there, or we're just gonna end it. Like they straight up would do that. And then I read that apparently they said as well that they adopted a policy at one point where they were like, it was a 1 hour policy, as in we're only committing 1 hour to shooting and finishing a short entirely. So from shooting to like editing, they said 1 hour, no more.
Wow.
So they were just like extremely lazy.
Come up with everything.
But I mean, it makes it so much funnier because they know it doesn't matter.
It gives it a sense of energy and speed to it, though. I do feel that in the actual shorts themselves. So.
They always have to be on because you have such short time, and obviously they had such a short duration to even film it, that they're just always on. They're always trying to come up with the next outrageous thing out of their mouths.
Yeah, and every once in a while, if they're all like on, like the way that a scene moves in this can just be absolutely crazy.
Like, I mean, like the Santa Claus one just ends in literally just a hardcore porno.
Yeah,
like just blowing Mrs. Claus. And I mean that. Yeah. They're blowing Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, the Searching for Santa one is also particularly funny to me because there's also a lot of, like, obviously, like, Jewish humor that kind of comes out of this.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite jokes in all of the shorts is the one where Michael Showalter is explaining to Mrs. Claus what Hanukkah is.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, Chanukah? He's like, no, Hanukkah. And it's like it's that casual cliche of, like, a Jewish person explaining their holiday to, someone who doesn't understand. Yeah. But it ends up ending with him going, and we will not give up the Gaza Strip to the Lebanese.
And then it just fades away right away.
And you can tell that Michael Showalter like just turned it on for like a second, like he just went like full Israeli relative on someone. Yeah. And that ends with him looking like he's going to like explode with laughter.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that because they know and they just kind of do a fade away, but they leave enough, and it's really, really funny. That was one of the best parts for sure.
That joke like was one of the first ones where I had to pause and like I was like because I wasn't paying attention anymore.
Yeah, me too. I honestly I think out of all three of them, they're all great, but I really, really enjoyed
the Christmas one.
No, just Michael. Like out of the three.
Oh, out of the three
the
guys,
ones that I was laughing with the
Yeah.
most, I felt like Michael, not Ian Black. Although once again, all great, but that one Michael guy, I
really liked Michael Ian Black in the Lost Cousin Greg one or whatever, or the. David's cousin Greg or whatever. He's in the bathroom listening to Alanis Morissette, thank you, and like brushing his asshole with like a toothbrush.
While just like whistling like it's a normal day. Like they're just trying to do the worst possible things. But my favorite line from that skit is when he pushes the dog out the window. He's like, you know what? I'll be the first to say that was wrong. And then he does it again.
I thought that it would help. Like, sorry.
I thought that it would help, but I'll be the first to say that I was wrong.
I need to I just have to say, because like that's a scene, like that was the one I remember very specifically. That was the one where I was like this is perfection to me. Like, cause I I will even admit this, like, I think that whole like part of that explanation he gives was actually like legit my yearbook quote, because I had no idea what to think of, and I just watched it and I was like, well, this is like that, like it was just the idea of like him doing just like such a horrible act, like just throwing the dog out a window and then like
not
realizing
even trying
it
to justify
and then trying to justify his way out of it, which is just like that is just so like the way he delivers it is so perfect.
Yeah.
And
what I
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just like, that's perfect. Like, that's why. And I mean, like, I was thinking back, I remembered, like, I was like, oh shit, yeah, I think I legit put like that was wrong with me, and I will be the first person to admit it. Like, that was in my yearbook. Like, that was my yearbook quote in high school.
And what I love about that scene too is that previously we've only seen them do absolutely terrible things and not acknowledge it at all. So that one moment where he's like, you know what? I went a little too far. It broke me. Like, I was like, because they are doing extremely disgusting things to these
that's
people.
the one where they're dumping pickles and wine on her like family
sacred
photos
from the Civil War era,
and then they're trying to clean it up with a PB&J sandwich, trying to like wipe it up.
Then he goes around and starts berating some like clerk because he's like, do you have jelly remover for photo albums? And
she's like, what? He's like, do you speak English?
Do you have jelly remover, you idiot?
But also one thing worth mentioning about the dog being thrown out the window is also the like gorilla shot on video, like homemade thing that they're doing. The way that they move that camera of him sliding that window down from the shot of him walking over to it with the dog, just the way that those two shots connect is a huge part of why that lands for me.
And even the great moment where they're like they show that they've saved the dog, at least the first time, and then it shows Michael Ian Black catch it, and you're like a little relieved, and then what does he do? Just throws it in a dumpster, like right away, like without even hesitation. He's like, trash.
Yeah, then the cousin comes home. He's like, I found Pinochet in the garbage. Like,
and then he throws it out the window again. I'll be the first to admit I was wrong.
I remember watching this again.
20 minutes about that skit.
I was so uncomfortable watching it again because it was the scene right before the cousin shows up where like the wife is just like sobbing on the couch after the way they treat her. And Michael Ian Black is wearing a dress and he just starts like beating her up for no reason.
Yeah, he's
I actually really thought it was funny because Michael Ian Black can't hold in the laughter either. Like he's just literally, the joke is that he's hurting her physically.
Yeah.
And what is the line he has? He's like, what did John Mellencamp say or whatever? Because it hurts so good. Yeah. That's what it is. Oh my! And then they all have an orgy to Purple Rain. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah,
that's
and then they all leave happily. Like it's just like they fuck, and that's all they needed. They just needed that release, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so those are the first three shorts of the whole thing. There's so many of these shorts. They do a Die Hard riff at one point. They do a lot of them involve Christmas, actually. Quite a few of them. I don't know if they just did a lot of Christmas comedy shows.
I think so.
that has to have been part of it.
One of my favorites it's a very short one and very simple, but the band practice one.
Oh yeah,
and
audition.
One of my favorite moments is when he's sticking in the 1, 2, 3, 4, and he just keeps going, and they just stare at him, and he's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna get into it. Just keep going. Pay attention to me. It's coming. Don't you worry. It's so good, man. It's unbelievably funny.
Yeah, because it's like a young high school kid wants to put on a band, and like these 3 grown men in suits. Yeah.
And one of them, instantly, he mentions his girlfriend, and he's like, where is she? In the backyard? He just leaves without telling anybody.
And when they eventually play the song, the keyboard is playing, even though he left to go and talk to Debbie in the backyard.
That was a great comedic moment where they actually start the song, and then it's just like an overdub lounge song that has nothing to do with what they're playing, or like their instruments or anything like that.
Yeah, again, the way that
There's no rules to any of their shit.
Well, it's I actually
which is beautiful.
I think that CJ really hit on it when he talked about like their knowledge of cliches, like the way
exactly.
that they take an
just
idea
conventions and
they just I just found I was constantly shocked. Not in as the same way as I was with John Waters, but like just the way that they would turn a scene on its head and then immediately commit to that. Like the way that audition one ends is what actually killed me about that whole short. The one where the dad comes in and he's like, I actually hate my son and I hate my agent. And these 3 guys who just like stole my son's girlfriend. Like, you're my family now. Son, you are actually disowned. Because and they were the ones who smashed the father's guitar.
Yeah, and it's like a priceless from Eric Clapton, I think. It's an Eric Clapton
and
guitar.
they did it to kill a bug, but the father is just like, I'm so happy that you killed that bug in my garage. Using my priceless
and then
guitar.
they even break down the fourth wall more by bowing to the audience from the garage at the end, like it's a stage show. Like they just come out with they basically, like you said, they take the convention and then just break it over and over and over again.
CJ, maybe you can tell us about the one short here. Unlike any of the other shorts, the one where they just prance around with the dog to walk on the ocean by Toad the Wet
It's like
Sprocket.
the only wholesome skit in the whole thing. I was waiting for it, and I think that's the point, but...
Yeah, that was called, I mean, the title of that short is Day Off. And I wonder if they really were just like...
They had a day and a dog.
They had a dog and they were like, oh, let's just do this. Like, they just shot it.
We got a dog.
I think part of the greatness of it is like you are waiting for something and then it just ends. Like that's what makes it.
I literally put in my notes, wholesome. Because I was just so shocked that nothing happened. I guess that's the subversion this time.
Yeah, that literally it's
just 3 guys playing in a park.
Also, I found all of their 90s needle drops just like so... They took me back.
The amount of times where when they're doing the caroling and they start singing Riders on the Storm and keep them separated by the offspring.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know how they got it, because you were saying that they were just selling these DVDs, so like they didn't have permission to use any of this music.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I noticed right away. I was like, there's no way they have the rights to Riders on the Storm by the Doors. There's no fucking way.
No, there's no. These are totally like bootleg. Like they uploaded most of them to like... So around 2005, I think, they were uploading them to like College Humor, and that was just back in the day where like DMCAs and like were not really happening. It was more so like people were, I guess back then they were more so obsessed with like illegal downloading of music and all that, and so this was like just so like tiny, like they were just throwing these things together, and it wasn't really like a big fish to fry for anyone. So yeah, I mean, like these are totally just like they made them explicitly for the purpose of just showing them as part of these shows, and then just for the fans they just compile them onto this DVD, and it kind of I mean, it's a limited viewership, but people who have seen it and stuff, like a lot of people really cherish this collection, and myself included, obviously.
Yeah, and just speaking again on the music thing, where they were kind of like playing on, using all these drops that they clearly didn't have permission for. They even end a skit dedicating one to Paul Simon because
they use America or whatever,
like the
right?
angel fucks Dave and then he comes eventually, and then it just cuts.
You've heard of Touched by an Angel.
Yeah, and they're like dedicated to Paul Simon. I'm like, this has got to be like kind of a nudge in the sense that they know they couldn't get Paul Simon's permission on this, so now they're even dedicating it to him as like a I don't know if it's a middle finger necessarily. That's probably not the right word.
Well, no, that short actually opens with "This is all Paul Simon let us use this" or whatever. But I don't know that that's actually.
I thought that was part of the joke.
Yeah, I think it's part of the joke is that they're just being like this
because it's so outrageous.
We conceptualized this in Paul Simon's music space, and we were grateful that he even let. I think it even says that he like let us use his space and like his like live with him or something like that. Basically.
Yeah.
They were like, this was creatively influenced by Paul Simon. Thanks so much. We couldn't do it without you.
That's just such a great joke.
I really liked the Sam Rockwell pizza one too, where they do tons of music in that one.
Yeah.
I think I love with that one. It's two things I love in that one. I mean, like the Sam Rockwell stuff, obviously, but I love when they're like, "I'm bored," and he just puts a knife to Michael puts a knife to David's throat or something, and they're
wait. It's funny. It opens is David puts a knife to his own throat, and they were like, "Hey, stop that!" And then Michael's like, "I'm bored too," and he takes the knife and then puts it also to David's throat.
And then it's when they were playing charades, and that one is like. That's so like that's like such a almost like flawlessly done joke where like, you know, Michael and Michael are just like playing charades perfectly, and then you just it was Michael and David, and then you see like Showalter just sitting there and like his like ghost or something comes out of his body and just goes, "Fuck you."
Yeah, that was one of my favorites too. That was such a well landed joke.
But when Sam Rockwell is, I think he's the pizza delivery guy in that one.
Yeah.
And they ordered a pizza, and then he opens the door, and they immediately go, "We don't have any money." And he drops the pizza, and he's like, "Do you think I'm some sloppy wet pussy for you to fuck?"
And that's when they busk, right?
That's when they start busking, and this is one of my favorite bits because this is actually one of the few times that they actually take a lot of advantage of that guerrilla shot on video thing that they're doing, because you can tell that they're busking in New York, and all the people that they're filming like aren't aware that they're not just real buskers because they're so bad.
Yeah. Once again, they're doing like these unconventional songs. They do keep them separated again. That drops 2 or 3 times in the thing, and I almost feel like it's a joke. Like they have that as kind of a joke song. I kind of like the song.
Well, yeah, they do. They go from like classics, and then they'll do like Jesse's Girl and Pinball Wizard.
Yeah,
but then they'll do Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba.
Yeah, exactly.
And like they're doing it on an acoustic guitar with like 3 vocalists.
Exactly.
Like it makes no sense, and then all of the money is obviously they're making so much money by doing this because that's the whole point. They're raising money for the pizza, and then they go back and they strip and have an orgy with Sam Rockwell, the pizza guy.
Of course,
eat all the pizza, and
which, by the way, reminded me of Driller Killer. The way that they eat the pizza, because they on purpose,
like when Abel Ferreira,
they on purposely make this sound like all disgusting, as gross as it possibly can, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves. So I was just sitting there like, you bastards.
Well, and he makes it worse too, because he's like, nothing better than a sloppy wet pizza.
It is his fake teeth fall out while he's trying to eat the pizza, which is so funny. Yeah.
Another like little thing that they like to repeat little things that only happen every like few skits, and one of the ones that I love is every time David does something bad to Michael accidentally, Michael just goes, "I don't want to hear it, David," and then starts mercilessly beating the shit out of him like every time, and you know it's about to happen because he's just like, "I don't want to hear it, David," and then just starts destroying him, and it's such a funny little character.
Yeah, the way that these shorts eventually ended up actually connecting to one another sometimes, I actually found a little bit rewarding. And maybe that can let us into where we get into...
Because it felt like there was actually some character thing going on there.
Yeah.
You know, at least a little. They at least had like a catchphrase or something, but they used it in, once again, such an unconventional way.
Each comedian, carves out their own little bit of a personality every so often that I really liked. But we can maybe pivot towards, because we can't do all the shorts, but we can maybe pivot towards doing, CJ suggested maybe doing, picking out our favorite shorts here. And I gotta say, number 1 for me, well, it's actually a tie, so this is cheating, but one of them anyway, The Woods. The one with Paul Rudd. This one was unbelievable to me. And this is the one where they're
it's more subtle than the rest. Which
they're going hiking through the woods, and they realize they're like, we're having a good time hiking. Michael Ian Black is hiking in flippers, like scuba flippers, and they get there and they're like, the woods are so wonderful. And they're, if we look around, there's food here. And they look down and they're just like these great frankfurters, natural food, these hot dogs, just already pre-made, ready for them to go. And
In
they go,
the buns.
so yeah, why don't we find some food? Why don't we find some wood and we'll cook up these frankfurters? And Michael Showalter brings over a packaged log of wood, Duraflam wood.
Duraflam.
Yeah. He's like, I've got the wood, and now we just need something smaller to like get it started with. And Michael Ian Black's like, how about this? They just quickly pan over to him holding a baby upside down, completely incorrectly, and David Wayne immediately lights a match over top of the real baby. Yeah. And Michael Showalter has the best, and this is the best line delivery for me of all of them too, where he's outraged. He's like, "You can't burn a baby." And David Wayne hits back with even better line delivery. He goes, "Haven't you heard of Vietnam? That's all we did over there. Now, come on and give me a hand with this."
And justifying it too.
And Michael Showalter has again, the line delivery has never been stronger in any of these shorts than right here, because Michael Showalter goes, I guess you're right.
No arguing with that.
So they're all start walking over to light the baby on fire, and this is also the one skit that includes their friend Paul Rudd, who would eventually be in a lot of the work that they do. Paul Rudd was in Wet Hot American Summer, as well as Role Models that David Wayne did as well.
Yeah.
And Paul Rudd does his classic "no," and he does those great like dance moves that he does like on the spot.
Yeah.
He was so good. But the rest of this short is like Paul Rudd comes up, throws the baby into the middle of the forest. Just like...
Isn't it to save it, too?
Yeah, it's to save it. He's like, no, don't burn it. Yeah, he
it.
like football spirals it into the middle of the forest. And then they all, start bonding over. They're like, why don't we all cook these frankfurters together? But this is the short that ends in a completely different way than any of the shorts that I absolutely loved, which is where they're all sitting around eating the hot dogs. And I think they go, wow, this fire's great, because they spent a whole montage of building the fire. And literally there's a shot of like them hammering a piece, like a 2x4, like they're building that's building the fire apparently.
Yeah.
And Paul Rudd goes, these franks aren't bad either. And they all have like a really fake laugh. And then they all get really existential. And they all have moments where they think it does a brief like overlaid flashback of previous shorts where they've remembering like pain or suffering from a previous short where they've been like attacked, or one of them remembers the Christmas caroling violent scene, and Paul Rudd remembers his arc on Friends with Jennifer Aniston. And then it ends. That's the end of that short.
Oh man.
That one, like front to back, I couldn't believe how that one goes from them being friends in the woods to the lighting a baby on fire joke to killing the baby by throwing it in the forest
to this like existentialism of their career,
being a friend group again. And then to like this like weird existential pain thing again, and that all that
even connects Paul Rudd's real life career.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that short is like 3.5 minutes. The way that it gets to all those different ideas. So
yeah,
that one kind of blew me away. Mm-hmm. But for you, CJ, what's the best one?
Oh God,
I mean, show them one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably just blaze through as many as I can, because we already talked about like turkey hunting and David's cousin, which I love.
Well,
and
I was hoping you would hit my second favorite one.
Which one?
Well, it's Bradley Cooper raking leaves.
Oh, raking leaves. Yes.
He becomes the devil.
His name is Bill. Bill is the bub.
And also, it was such a trip to watch Bradley Cooper. I had no idea I was going to see fucking Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, when was he blonde? I don't remember him ever being blonde.
This was so young, right? I mean, this has got to be 2000s, 2001, I guess, when they had Cooper.
Yeah, probably. Well, and they also give him that brief subplot role in Wet Hot American Summer.
Oh, yeah.
In Wet Hot American Summer, he's Michael Ian Black's gay lover in the in the like I don't remember if they're in like the cottage or the outhouse or wherever, or in the pool, or shit, what is it? It's like the lake.
It's like a supply room or something.
Yeah, it's the supply room near the lake where they keep like the kayaks and stuff or whatever. But that one kind of blew me away with Bradley Cooper as Satan, where they fend him off by slapping his abs and then fucking him, and seemingly to death. But then again, the way that all the shorts end, they're all really happy by the end.
Yeah, because you got it.
Everyone's friends. They're friends with Beelzebub, the Satan, who has the great line where Bradley Cooper very sensually says, "You guys want to rake my leaves?"
Well, I mean, if like they were the guys, like Wet Hot American Summer was Bradley Cooper's first feature role. That was like his debut, right? So like that's, I mean, I guess he just hung around with them. It's interesting that like Bradley Cooper did start out trying to be like part of this like comedy thing, and eventually like being The Hangover, and then now he's like so grim and serious. But yeah, I mean, I like that, and then he's in Yoga as well, although in a much smaller role. But Yoga is also like one of my favorites. I love in Yoga when they're like sitting down and Showalter is just like smoking his cigarette in the room and then the woman behind him is just coughing and he's just like, shut up. Yeah, just so casually just tells them to shut up. Just something I've done a lot to people where like they're coughing or seeing them just like shut up. Like if they're just involuntarily doing something, I'm just like, shut up. I get so thrown off.
One of the things that I love when they start like kind of breaking down even the filmmaking, there's a skit where I can't remember what happens in the beginning, but at the end they all get ice cream and they're like talking about it, and then they go to Michael and he's literally like holding the boom mic, and in the most awkward way because he's trying to hold the boom mic and the ice cream, and it's like it's just so they're going for that kind of amateur thing, and it's hilarious. It's great.
I think, I mean, yeah, and it's not one of my favorites, but like they do that with the one take short. It's like they hype up so much, and that is just like it's
the one take short is pretty. I mean, the thing about the one take short is it's kind of like one joke, unfortunately. Whereas I feel like a lot of the shorts are really good because they're firing so many different joke cylinders at the same time. Yeah. But the one take joke is funny just for anyone who is interested in film, because those things are, because like the actual joke is that
it's one take.
Yeah, well, because it's so impressive. So, but the thing that is always you have to keep in mind is like how motivated is this shot.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's the thing is that
they're just doing
they intentionally make it so unmotivated and so unnecessary,
just
like
tedious almost.
Well, because they do it where like it would actually be more convenient to just do a pan, and instead they're like, what if we do we zoom in on this thing and then pull back out, when it would have been just so much easier of a camera move and made more sense to just not do it at all.
And that's something I also like about it, is that they're not afraid to be subtle about that kind of a joke, that's not outrageously hilarious, but when you think about it, and like now that we're reminiscing, like that's a very well crafted joke and very funny.
Oh yeah.
So they're not always trying to just do the whole like, hey, we're being complete psychopaths and then we're fucking and then all that stuff. They have some really good subtle jokes in here too.
Oh yeah, I think the one thing, like one of the shorts is one of my personal favorites, although I know a lot of people like disagree, but I feel really fond about like the college reunion short, their take on like The Big Chill, which it's so weirdly deranged, and like I just remember it's that one part where they're like sitting around talking, and one of them's like telling a story about like when they were in college, and they're like, get this, guys, his thesis was triple spaced, and they just die from laughter. And there's something so specific about that just really, really, really gets me, and I think it's just absolutely hilarious. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean there's so many like I would say the other one's
there's one where their wiffle ball dispute that's the Paul Simon one, right? Where their wiffle ball dispute is
that's one of my favorites.
Settled by an angel that then fucks the shit out of David.
And what I love too is what they're doing when they're trying to bat. They're doing like this classy gentleman stuff when they're trying to do the batting, and it's just the physicality of it is very funny.
Well, and also they're terrible, so they keep missing.
Yeah,
and then I'm pretty sure it's David who like intentionally hits Michael with the wiffle ball,
and that's where he says. That's where he says his line. Where he's just like, "I don't want to hear it, David," and then just starts beating the hell out of him.
There's one where they go back in time to their Jewish ancestors and fix the native relations by selling them weed,
giving them $40, and then
selling them $40 worth of weed. I'm trying to think what other there's the whodunit one
Yeah, that was great.
Where they do their take on the murder mystery. The thing that I really liked about that is that they're always like, the lights go out and then someone's dead and they're like, who did it? But every single time we know that they've done it, basically. Yeah. Like at one point they just, with the lights on, I'm pretty sure Showalter like karate chops the dude, and then when he gets down on the ground, they just take a pistol to his head like once, twice, then they give the gun to the next guy and they take turns all shooting him, and then the lights go off and it comes back on and they're like, he's dead, who did this?
I think my favorite part of that though is when like they're shooting him and then Showalter, like, I think whoever was the last one, like he shoots him in the head like several times, then points the gun and shoot at David and shoots, but he's like no bullets. Then he points it back down and shoots the guy again and it does go off, which makes no sense.
What I also love is how the skits, like, especially like once it gets to the end, it seems like their characters have gotten to this complete almost sporadic kind of personality where like it starts with them turning on the TV and arguing like what channel they're gonna watch, and at first it's like sports, and then it's no, I want my drama, sports, drama, and then it just becomes meh, meh. You know, like they just keep switching sporadically back and forth.
Right, that's the one with the cat, right?
Yeah, and it's the last one. It's the one where it ends with them all like just sad, and then it just cuts to credits.
Wait, because they tried to steal someone's cat?
Yeah. And then
they were like, it's dead.
To the little girl. Oh god.
Yeah. There's also one really bizarre, absurd one, Dickfish.
Yeah, that's also one of.
It's funny. Where they stick a dildo to the fish and they're jerking the fish off.
And they even start it with like, this is kind of a lost Stella sketch. Yeah. We didn't know what to do with it. And I don't know if that was part of the joke. I thought it was, because the way that they were talking about it seemed like they were still poking fun at it. So go ahead.
No, I think like with that one, that it was funny rewatching it. That became one of my favorite things because I love the setup of like them acting like it's this lost short and doing this kind of like documentary thing where they're all doing talking heads interviews, explaining it, and then they show it and it's just the dumbest goddamn thing like in the world.
Yeah, because they're explaining conceptually how much thought we put into it. We were like, we had this really great idea of just like a fish, but it has a giant dick.
We just thought of it. We were like, wow.
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna have to enter the reductive rating round on this one and final statements. But this one got a pretty solid 4 from me too. I don't know what I had a hard time kind of like wrapping my mind around like exactly why, but I don't know. I more felt this rating one out because I laughed a lot. I found these shorts pretty consistently funny and outlandish and sporadic, and I really can't get over Bradley Cooper as Satan and the way that they will, they'll take that idea, but then they'll also immediately like address it to death, where like one of them literally just looks at the camera and like, it's a battle between good and evil, and Bittersweet Symphony starts playing. and then again they fight him by slapping his abs, like trying to kill him with that, and they beat him with a log. And again, just the way that these skits feel like completely unpredictable, and that someone will say a line and it will completely derail everything about that skit from the time being. Like they will almost establish a logic to the skit just to immediately derail it. Yeah. And
as soon as you figure it out, they just pull the rug out from
I just found that like endlessly funny, because there was no way, like I would immediately, my brain would immediately try to wrap myself around the universe that they're establishing with the skit, and then one of them would improv something that's really funny, and then that would be it. That would be the new direction of the skit, and then again they would always have to find their way back to a certain place, and sometimes it would be nonsensically, and sometimes it would be it actually would kind of make a little bit of sense. So yeah, for me, I just thought that this had like a great absurd comic rhythm to it, and I liked that it had that homemade amateur quality shot on video
really
style
adds to it.
Yeah. Well, and that they actually found inventive ways to milk the visuals for comedy sometimes. Again, I still think the reason, a huge part beyond his delivery of "I threw the dog out the window" is the shot where because they don't even show you him doing it. They just show his physical movement as he's shutting the window closed.
And the dog's
and like that's
gone.
enough. And the way that the camera moves sells the rest of that. So
Yeah.
the way that they would commit to the absurdity of this and make it a fundamental part of their characters, and the way that they would, actually connect these shorts into a larger universe together. I found it very funny and very rewarding as they all went on, even if there was the occasional skit that didn't, wasn't as hilarious. Yeah. Like I wrote a couple of them down here that I didn't take notes for. So I wrote poker and mustache, and I'm sure they had funny parts in them, but I didn't write any notes. Mustache.
Yeah, because they're just like forcefully trying to grow it with such with such tensity.
I guess it's just such a simple joke. I didn't have to take any notes for it.
Yeah. I think they even mentioned they're like, put bare naked ladies on or something, and then they just start growing mustaches. It was so weird, but I enjoyed it.
But for you, CJ,
my rating. I mean, like personally, given how it's like it was everything, it's like it would technically be like a full on 5 because I just adore these but I mean like I guess like if I had like a more like critical eye, I would have just been like a 4, and that's just because like there's just inherently unevenness to this kind of thing. It's a compilation. It was never meant to be
comedy. Yeah,
it was never meant to be like made in this format. It was just compiled. But I mean even then, like you get, like you said, you get a lot of fun kind of things as you see kind of like callbacks and recurring jokes and stuff. But I mean, so like on like just a personal level, it's one of my absolute favorites. It's also insanely rewatchable. Like it's still really goddamn funny. Like this is almost like 15 years almost for me now since first seeing these, and they're still really, really, really funny. And that I find is very, very rare for a lot of comedies with me. It's hard for me to kind of rewatch comedies and find to still live up to like how funny it is. Like even over the years, I've watched these countless times, and yet it still can make me laugh a lot.
I'm going to give it a 4 as well. I agree. Like there can be some pacing issues just because they're sketches. I mean, that's just how it goes. I wasn't really expecting it to be completely fluent in that way. But this was
I honestly found that almost even funnier most of the time. How
and it kind of goes with how their characters are and everything. So, I'm going to give it a 4.
Yippee pippy, motherfucker.
And the baloney.
Yeah, the baloney.
My favorite skits, just the ones that I can think of right now
that we didn't get to.
When the long lost cousin one really I think might be the top for me. That dog line, just that's what kind of and CJ, you said this too. I think that's what kind of just hooked me.
That
like
clicked,
as soon as that happened, I was like, I get what these guys are doing, and I was on board. So that one really jumped out at me. The baseball one or wiffle ball one I really found funny just because there's a lot of physicality to it that's quite funny. And then the way that it ends with Paul Simon's like sweet song, but it ends with Dave having sex with an angel and finishing, and it's just like, good Lord, guys. And the Carol one was another one I wanted to shout out. There's a lot of great moments and good use of song drops, like that Riders on the Storm drop when the guy is just being mercilessly beaten in the face. It's just it's so weird and funny in the most violent way. But yeah, I really want to rewatch this because now that I feel like I've seen the footing a little bit of what they do, I want to kind of just throw myself into it because I was looking at it a bit with like a critic mind at first. And as the shorts went on, I was able to, get rid of that. But I would like to rewatch it with just a full-on make me laugh. Here we go. So, yeah, I'm going to give it a 4. This was hilarious.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that will wrap it up for this week's episode. That was Female Trouble 1974 and the Stella shorts from 1998 to 2002. CJ, thanks so much for bringing these films on with you. This is the part of the show where if you've got anything to plug, you can do it here.
I guess you can. I mean, like, I guess you follow me on Twitter. It's CJ_PRIN. Every once in a while, I do a podcast called That DMX Feeling, in which you watch films to see if they have that DMX feeling. It's with Ethan Vespi and Randy, who does not have Twitter, but that one, it's really fun. It's I think if you don't know what that DMX feeling is, you have to obviously listen to it to kind of get a sense as to what it is. But it's a very specific energy to films that I think there should be more of. But Yeah, I'd say just that, and I mean, I would to plug things with. I would also say if you're a fan of any of this, like if you're a fan of the Stella type stuff, if you can watch it. If you can't watch it, I would say just get in touch with me. I mean, it's kind of like
that was how we watched it.
Yeah, so. That's how we got.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of hard. It's like impossible. You can't get a hold of this thing through proper means. Some of them are on YouTube and Vimeo and stuff. But and I also recommend just check out more like shows that these guys have done, like Children's Hospital, which I'm actually going through right now, which David Wayne's involved in, and it has the kind of the same energy and a lot of the same cast. And check out the Stella show, Wet Hot American Summer, obviously. Like these are so many. I mean, I really love David Wayne and Showalter, and those two especially are really like just kind of comic geniuses to me. So yeah, I guess that's it for plugs.
It really made me want to go back and do Wet Hot American Summer and the show again, because you've seen the show, right? The Netflix show.
Oh yeah.
Not all of it.
Oh, you should watch the
show.
show.
I'm going to now that I
so
watched
good.
this.
Well, because Michael Showalter's like obviously one of the main guys on that thing too. So. All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week. In 1 week's time, for you guys patrons, we are going to be back doing a big one.
Yes.
Godzilla,
1954
is going to be the big one, and we're also going to be taking on 2 of the sequels, though, just in time for the new Godzilla film, King of the Monsters. We're going to do Godzilla vs. Mothra from 1964, and also Ghidorah, Three-Headed Dragon from 1964, the first official sort of like monster team-up film.
Yeah,
which I was genuinely shocked.
Beat you to it, Avengers.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was genuinely shocked.
I stole that from Josh.
Yeah, I was like, this actually follows the same narrative trajectory of the Avengers movies, and I was like, wow, so Marvel didn't even come up with that.
No, even like the cross-cutting.
The one thing everyone gives them credit for.
Even the cross-cutting stuff and all
Godzilla and Mothra and Rodan, the originals. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for everyone over there. That'll be your bonus episode next week. But in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back with a special guest. Host of the Body Double Pod, Nate Fisher, is coming on, and he is bringing with him the film Cobra. One we've been wanting to get to for a while.
Absolutely.
With Sylvester Stallone from 1986, and also directed by George P. Cosmatos, the father of the filmmaker behind Beyond the Black Rainbow and Mandy. So
baby.
That's what we're going to be talking about alongside the film Cop. Which I believe 1988 and starring James Woods is considered sort of like one of the most like proto cop fascist crazy violent Hollywood films. So
stoked.
That is going to be your free episode in 2 weeks' time. I think that'll
be fun.
I think that's a good place to leave it. Thanks as always for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.